Thank you, Lynn. Good morning, everyone. I've had the mute button. I've had the mute button on this whole time. It's only 7 minutes, but thank you, Lynn. Thanks for letting me know. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to Astro Lunatic's Guide to the Universe. I am Susan, your very blonde-rooted guide on this flight of fancy, flighty, flaky. You know what it is? I have like this headset that I borrowed from my kid. It's a gaming headset. And exactly where you would fucking grab the headphone part of it is the mute button. So whoever designed these headphones, fuck you. Oh my God, it's crazy. Of all the things that I have to check when I'm going live, it's that mute button that always gets me. Anyway, I'm here. And you're here too. Yes, Lynn, I had a blonde moment. It's okay. It's all right. Yeah, so start over, rewind. I don't even remember what I was saying now before I unmuted myself. Welcome to the post-eclipse show. And yeah, while I was muted, I was letting everyone know where they can find me. Please check in the description of the video for the Gilded Chat link if you would like to become part of my small but growing community. I think we've got about 10 or 11 people there. It's just mainly me posting. I usually update with the latest live videos from YouTube. Um, More of the action is on Twitter, and I don't know, like I have these little pockets of engagement here and there. I have my Substack letter. Please subscribe to that so that in the future when I am updating it, you'll know when my things are posted or when I have an interview or something that I'd like to promote. You'll know what's going on. Um, yeah, what else? Facebook, I'm on Instagram. And oh yeah, I was mentioning while I was muted, I was mute mentioning that my last video, my Tuesday pop-up got almost 40 views, which doesn't seem like a lot, but it is a lot considering that it's like a lot more than my average. I want to say that it's bumped up quite a bit, and it's probably because I'm posting. Last week I posted on my Facebook page and my Instagram as well as Twitter, letting everyone know that I was going live. So I guess it helps to keep up, right? With your socials. Anyway, thank you everyone. I appreciate you. So please like and share and subscribe and hit the ball. No, don't hit the ball. Hit the bell. Hit the bell. You'll know when I have a new video or I'm going live. And follow me Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Rumble. Check out the Gilded, link in the description, and subscribe to the Substack because I can actually do podcasts. And if I really get fucking mad at YouTube, I just might do that. We'll see how it goes. There's a big battle on. You know how it goes. You never know what's going to get your balls busted. What's the latest? Or retroactive. That's the fucked up part. It's like, just leave me the fuck alone. I'll just continue to say what I want to say and get in trouble like I always do. I'm kind of used to it. just the way I was born. I'm a shit stirrer. I can't help it. So, what kind of shit am I stirring today? Let's talk a little bit about the eclipse. If you're on my Twitter, then you know I've been posting a wee bit about that. And the eclipse was 6 degrees, 5 degrees, 5 to 6 degrees, 6 degrees. We round up of Taurus, and I looked to see what kind of asteroid action we had going on, and pretty close at 8 degrees of Taurus in retrograde motion, we have asteroid Hephaestus. There's a few different spellings for Hephaestus. That's Hephaistos or Phaestus, and then there's another spelling too. But Hephaestus is one of my favorite asteroids. It's definitely on my list of favorites and ones that I've been looking at for a while. So, in mythology, Hephaestus was the daughter of Zeus and Hera. And I guess there's a few different accounts, as with many figures in mythology. There are a few different versions of the story, but one of them is that he is uh, the parthenogenic son of Hera, which means that he was conceived without copulation. So this happens in mythology. It also happens in nature. I know that there are amphibians, frogs, a species of frog in particular, and I think it can happen in humans too. But I don't know. I haven't looked for the literature on that one. That would be a big bombshell, but I'm willing to bet that it happens. We just don't hear about it. Um, and who knows? Maybe those are the abduction scenarios and implantations and removals of fetuses. But I'm not going to get too off track. Hephaestus. So he was either the son of Zeus and Hera, or he was born of a virgin parthenogenically by parthenogenesis by Hera. And so, as the story goes, he was rejected by his mother and his father. His mother, because he was deformed. I guess he had a club foot, and um, he was he was cast off, from his family, rejected. Um, probably in the parthenogenesis story, Zeus probably had an issue with the fact that it wasn't his kid, but probably really jealous of Hera that she could bear a child without him. Not to mention, his own philandering, but it's a story as old as time. So anyway, so they kick him out of the nest, and he, in an archetypal sense, refers to feeling like a monster, a reject, the ugly duckling. But Hephaestus goes on to become a skilled craftsman and metalworker. Uh, so in terms of the quote gods that that let's say led the way or taught the humans certain skills, he would be associated with crafting, smelting, metalwork, and so probably would be related to alchemy. Uh, and so, yeah, he went on to be like the chief um, weapons supplier, crafter for the gods in their many wars. So he fashioned the instruments of battle, and he also made the sandals of Achilles and the winged helmet for Hermes, aka Mercury. So he's an interesting character on a personal level, archetypally, you know, the ugly duckling thing, feeling very insecure about one's looks, body dysmorphia. But on the flip side, the beautiful things that can be developed to compensate despite feeling ugly, but being very beautiful on the outside. And in some ways, being crippled or hobbled because of it or flourishing in spite of it. So I find that to be an interesting asteroid. So that really is part of the story that's culminating with the lunar eclipse, as the lunar cycles, full moon is always a culmination, the fullness of a thing and a release. And because it's the eclipse, it's ending something. And it's part of the story of the nodal transit, the North Node going through Taurus, where it's been for about a year and a half, maybe a little over. So, the overarching themes for the past year and a half to 2 years, I'm just going to look and see. It goes all the way back to 2021 when the nodes went into Taurus and Scorpio. And I just want to give you an exact date. Let's see. So we're looking at late 2021. Yeah, the heck. Well, maybe even early 2022. Let's see. I've got to be exact. Bear with me. Oh, yeah, well, it was January 2022. So it's a little over. Yeah, it is about 18 months. So it's a culmination. It's wrapping up that cycle. It's giving us one big last look at what was that 18-month cycle about? What were we building? What were we using the North Node for to move forward towards? In Taurus, Taurus is about stability and finance and resources, raw materials, building materials, commodities, values, things of value, um, places and areas where our values might be stuck. Uranus has been working on that. Uranus is where Uranus it was at the point that the nodes moved, the north node moved into Taurus. So at that point, January 2022, Uranus was at the point where Jupiter is now. So whatever the shakeups and um, events that happened over the year and a half and the big changes, because that's Uranus, um, wherever our stability and sense of security was shaken up, that was part of the thing for you. So now Jupiter's there at that point. Jupiter is about our values and what we are learning and seeing from a higher perspective. And Jupiter also has a lot to do with religion and law. And even if you're not religious, you're still influenced by the prevailing values of the culture, let's say, that you grew up in. So a lot of things changing in regard to physical resources and the physical world, because our sense of what is real and solid is changing. It's changing. It's weird. It's weird and it's getting weirder as Jupiter moves towards Uranus. So, anyway, not to get too deep into it, although I'm always getting deep into it. So the lunar eclipse is ending that. The north node is already in Aries. We're already in that, but the lunar eclipse is bringing us back in time a little bit so that we can have one last look at where we're leaving before we close the door. And the door will be closed by the next new moon. There's no going back. So while we have had our world shaken up, our views have changed, our understanding has changed, and we're seeing, that the world as we know it is no longer, or knew it, or thought we knew it. See, that's the thing. It just brings to mind the song refrain. Nothing is real. 'Cause you don't know shit. I don't know shit. The one thing I know is that I don't know shit. So I I try to observe everything. Observe and report. That's what I'm here to do. Anyway, I felt like the full moon was pretty peaceful. Even the protests seemed like, I mean, I don't know what it was like in the US, but I did catch one post about there's huge protests going on right now in the US, not just the US, but uh, it was in the UK. It was very peaceful, and it was one particular side, but the other side, quote side, was there supporting them and affirming their right to express. So, what is uniting everyone on both sides, except for those who they just want to be in hate and they want conflict And it is the either or, not the common ground that we're both, like, both sides of the equation are experiencing is the grief and the pain, the sorrow and the heartache. And realizing that although they've been pitted against one another, neither one is the enemy. There are driving forces above them that want them. They're very invested because they're being used, obviously. And so, on this level, it gives me hope. And this particular protest was very peaceful. And of course, that's not the way it's going to be spun in the media. But I thought, wow, this is Taurus moon. Taurus moon is like, I don't want to say ceasefire, but there could be a backing off of sorts um, on some front, maybe where it comes to how people are personally expressing it. And I hope this is what I'm seeing, that there is a weariness, like, because, who wants it? People don't really want it. They don't want it, but there is definitely a growing awareness of the truth. So that's the Taurus stuff. That's Jupiter in Taurus, and that's Uranus in Taurus, and Taurus being the tangible, practical, physical, as opposed to conceptual experience of our values, if I could put it that way. So, all right. So the eclipse yesterday, the 28th, that was a 9. So on some level, there's an ending. There is an ending of that phase. There will be a new phase, whether it's, the strategy of the military, let's say, and how things are being framed and what's the next phase, because it just doesn't seem like the first phase went very well. And then there's the public reaction. We're moving into another phase. So yesterday was an ending. Things are going to shift starting today. Thinking back to Hephaestus, I haven't checked the news. I haven't looked on the I haven't checked up on the keywords, but Hephaestus we could look at as arms manufacturers. Oh, there was something. Some kind of a ban in the US of either not export of arms, but maybe new contracts or permits, except for the military and their, and their contractors, of course. But exportation of arms. Now we're talking about weapons, but, and this is important, this does tie into the eclipse. So, Taurus being physical resources, and Jupiter we could tie to foreign, worldwide, global, uh, and also legal issues laws and statutes, is opposed to Mercury and Mars. Mars is weapons, and Mercury. So it's an announcement about war, foreign exportation of resources, weapons being one of them. And yeah, and Mars. Mars has to do with weapons and metal, sharp, pointy metal objects. However, here's the thing. Uranus is in Taurus, and Uranus is technology. And as we know, that wars are not being fought the way they were in the past. We are much more high tech. The weapons that we have are high tech, and you don't have to export them. They don't have, they're not physical, they are technological. So this is interesting because the announcement comes at the full moon or around the full moon. With the lunar eclipse. And the moon being opposite the moon being the public, and the sun being, let's say, the leader, making an announcement, Mercury, on about weapons and war and exportation of resources, Jupiter and Taurus. Um, so there's the public side to this, and there is the private side, obviously. So it excludes government contractors. It is, I mean, who's doing this other than people who are engaging in illegal activities? We're talking about Scorpio here. Scorpio does deal with criminal criminal elements. So we're talking about, unless you're a criminal aligned with the government. Uh, I don't know. There's an interesting aspect that I'm seeing to this because Uranus is in the mix. So right after the full moon at 6 degrees, then the moon moved on to Jupiter and opposed the Mars and Mercury, giving a message to the criminals, to certain aggressors, um, regarding legalities and law. But there's always loopholes. It's all bullshit. They just don't want the average person to get any ideas. You could, I don't know, they're always complaining about like gun bans, right? Am I gonna get banned? Whatever. Fuck the censors. Um, we can't have the average citizen owning certain weapons, right, to protect themselves, Second Amendment stuff. But now they're going to say you can't export them? Like, wouldn't they want them out of the country? I don't know. Just saying. But this is very interesting because then the moon after that would conjunct Uranus. So the idea of technology comes into play. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there. I really haven't unpacked it. It's just a note to self to probably look into it. But we do have some interesting things going on in Scorpio, and I'm going to get into that. So, with that, today, Sunday, 10/29 reduces to the one day. Yesterday, ending, lunar eclipse. Full moons are endings, lunar eclipses, big endings, huge endings, and on top of that, a 9-day in numerology. So there is no going back. That doesn't exist anymore. That phase is done. The door is closed. You saw what you were meant to see. And being that we're dealing with the Taurus and Scorpio axis, because it's those are fixed signs. So the signs of Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius, those were being dealt with hard while we had the transit of the nodes going through Taurus and Scorpio, because that made it was either transiting those signs or squaring the Leo and Aquarius. But the thing with those 4 signs is that they are fixed signs. They're very resistant to change. It takes them a long time to get it. They're very stubborn. Or I should say, it is very stubborn. The planets in those signs affecting the people who have those planets. Very, very resistant to change. I've dealt with a lot of Scorpio, Leo, Taurus, Aquarius, personally. And I have my Aquarius. It is stubborn. Um, but so it was very hard, I think, the transit of the nodes, because it meant that those people really had to look at their attachments and hopefully work with it and willingly let go and release. But a lot of that had to do with the need to look at certain psychological patterns with the South Node in Scorpio. But it was all dealing with attachment, either physical attachment to certain things and people and situations, or an emotional attachment. So there was a lot, just a lot. But this is like the last hurrah of that. This was okay, look at it, deal with it, get it, and move on. Not to stay stuck in any kind of guilt or um, tit for tat remorse, blaming, um, playing the victim, none of that. Because the other aspect that we have with the eclipse that happened maybe about 8 hours before the eclipse was when the moon moved into Taurus, it made a sextile with Saturn. And Saturn is conjunct the asteroid Karma. So, I mean, that's like a double dose right there, like double emphasis, exclamation point on the karma. And the idea that we need to be accountable, mature, and that means looking at ourselves and not blame shifting and taking the responsibility, so it's being responsible and accountable, but not taking on the blame and the guilt and the shame of it. So, I mean, karma just means the balancing of the scales. So when the scales are too weighted on one side or out of balance, and so, it's the concept of having to look at ourselves, be self-aware, looking at, from both sides and what both sides of the issues are and how each have been contributing. So, in that respect, I mean, I really feel like it was a kind of a grounding moment and stabilizing, you know, um, overall for most people. I mean, it's all very complicated, and people are very layered and nuanced, and a lot of things, different things going on with different people. But the message being, you can't go back. You can't go back to what it was, because what it was is what it isn't anymore. And so we have to figure out now what it is. And, not waiting, not looking at the past, not thinking that that's going to repeat, because that's, I mean, it's not good or bad. It's like, you don't have to wait for the other shoe to drop, too, because you can create something better and new with your newfound awareness. Now, what else can we look at? So, as far as the stars go, uh, that particular degree of Taurus, we have the star, I think it's Sharatan. No. Yes. Well, Sharatan is in there, but that's at 4 degrees. Sharatan in the Ram of Aries, and that is in the Horn. Hamal, that's what it was. Hamal. Oh, yeah. All right. So Sharatan Kaf is in Cassiopeia. And we have Alfurk. So Alfurk would be the closest. That's in Cephas. So Cephas is the king and husband of Cassiopeia. She was the queen, and their daughter is Andromeda, the chained woman. One thing I'll mention about Cephas is this constellation, and Alphirk, Alphirk, is the star in the belt of King Cephas. Cephas, the constellation, is known for people involved in the theater, and so actors and actresses. And who passed? Um, Matthew Perry. I didn't look at his chart. I was listening to someone else who was talking about his chart, and I think his Saturn might have been close to the lunar eclipse, and his moon, I think, is in Scorpio, and he's a Leo. Don't quote me on that. I haven't really looked at his chart, so um, it seems to me like he was very much affected by the eclipse. So what do we have? What else do we have? 7 degrees of Taurus is Metalla, Metlallah, Metalla. In the constellation of Triangulum, we have a few triangles as far as the constellations go. This is one of them, and they're both associated with Freemasonry. I won't get deep into it. However, if I go and look here, this is kind of interesting. I'll just read quickly. Triangulum, astrological influences. Triangulum is said to have been placed in the heavens by Jupiter at the request of Ceres, who asked that the shape of her island, Sicily, might be represented amongst the stars. Ceres, Sicily. I can't help but think of the mafia when I think of Sicily. No offense to my Italians, but okay, so as far as influences of the constellation, and it's small, there's only like 3 stars in it, and they make a triangle. According to Ptolemy, the nature of it is like Mercury. It is said to give a just, companionable, truthful, righteous, and benevolent nature with an interest in architecture and Freemasonry. So, architecture, in terms of literal architectural engineering, or we could talk about the Freemasons as the quote, architects of society. And what else do we have? The star has the planetary nature of Mercury and indicates those of a just nature and those living whose living is made in the legal professions. So we're now bringing in um, the themes of laws, judicial, legal. So you know, um, the court system, the justice system, the Department of Justice. There's a lot going on. This is not the only connection that I'm seeing with the planets and stars and asteroids that indicate a heavy emphasis on legalities, and justice. It's not just earthly justice. It's not just our worldly system of checks and balances and accountability. There is a sense of the operation of divine justice here. What do I mean by that? Um, let's have a look. The sun, um, at the time of the eclipse, was at uh, 5, 6 degrees, 5 degrees, 5 to 6 degrees of Scorpio. So the sun was connecting with asteroids. So before the eclipse, when it entered Scorpio, it it conjuncted Haumea. We can look at that as childbirth, the Empress. Lilith, asteroid Lilith, not Black Moon Lilith. Didymus, twins, doubles, splits, impersonality, disassociation. DID, MPD, that kind of thing. Dualistic, the polarities, like very uh, extreme polarities, we could say. Asteroid Elatus, those were before the eclipse. So with the eclipse, the sun was on Apollon, that's Apollo, another name for Zeus. So being the leader and administration of justice and having other people carry out the administration of justice and enforcement. And the asteroid Rhadamanthus. That's Rhadamanthus. And Rhadamanthus is one of those underworld judges, the arbiters of justice within the realms of the dead. That's the mythology. So it is the archetypal sense of divine justice and justice being worked on a metaphysical level that we're not aware of. It is the mechanism of the checks and balances that exist beyond the human system. So it is a karma thing. And when I've seen aspects to this particular asteroid, it is karmic justice just playing out. It is beyond our control. If we are extremely self-aware and we understand ourselves and our life path from a karmic perspective, as far as what our soul's intention is in this lifetime and what we're here to learn and where we're at as far as, you know, where we're at with our homework. Have we been doing our work, or are we still blocked in some way? Or are we refusing? So where we are stubborn and resistant to change, Taurus, Scorpio, Leo, Aquarius, that's where we're going to see the cosmic kick in the pants. We have to have that externalized for us to see it, because it's maybe so buried in our subconscious and we're so in denial, or we just don't understand, because it's part of the path. It's part of the initiation to have that kick in the pants, that cosmic 2x4 that says, hold up, you know, there's something that you need to see. It happens to everybody. But it's supposed to snap us out of it and get us back on the path, because once we see that, we're not allowed to go back. And if we choose to go back, that's when we have our downward spiral. That's when we have devolution. We're no longer on the ascending path, where karma is working for us and not against us. It's always working for us. It's never really against us. But we'll just keep getting battered, and until we get it. Maybe we don't get it. And some of us could be taken out of the game. If it's that serious and that crucial, it really depends on what the soul is here to accomplish in this lifetime. So this is the underworld, the judge, it's a judgment on subconscious level, the the collective unconscious, and what I've seen with the asteroid in Scorpio, um, is that, the way the world works is we have media. Things are playing out on a public stage. We have characters, and we get to see people get karma. Um, and we can get a little bit more understanding of the um, how the balancing of the scales happen and what the nature of reality actually is. So we tend to see judgment. And now I know I've talked about this in my last podcast, but um, Libra season, when we entered Libra, that's the season of the harvest. And what happens during the harvest is sacrifice. Sacrifice goes along with the harvest. And the harvest is about separation of what is useful with what is not. And the concept of sacrifice comes into play on many different levels. There is the occult level of sacrifice, and we see that playing out during this time of year also. Um, and also with Scorpio season, that's where we start to see the death and decay. The fields are dying, the harvest is being brought in. If you look at a pumpkin field, the vines are shriveling. It's the green part that's dying, and what's left is the fruit, and that's the harvest. So, what we do with the harvest is we bring in the fruits of our labor from the spring into the summer and then to the fall. And we put some of it away. We use some of it, and some of it we put away to store up for the winter. Um, but it is the part that is discarded. It is the idea of discarding things. That is how the sacrifice plays out. It's like letting go of something. It's like got to give something up, give something in order to get something. But in the ancient religions, that old time religion that some people still practice, sacrifice is a part of that. So what do you see in the spring? There is the sacrifice that happens in the spring, and that is the season of the ram. And the lunar eclipse, post eclipse, does go through some stars in the ram. It's the horns of the ram. And if you understand the um, the ancient Hebrew traditions, use the horn of the ram, called the shofar, as their call to war. They would blow the shofar. Interesting, isn't it? But we're in the opposite season, and we see that was really the building up to where we're at right now. So we've got Hamal. Hamal is in The horn of it's around the forehead. Sheraton was in the horn, the right horn, I think. Sheraton. That was 4 degrees of Taurus. So, we're looking at the ram and the sacrifice, the sacrificial lamb, so to speak. And if we go back to Scorpio and looking at the asteroids that we have there, we'll look at the stars in a second, but I just wanted to go back to the asteroids in Scorpio. So, yeah. So we're talking about judgment. The next asteroid that is in the mix is at 7 degrees of Scorpio is Narcissus. So the things that we see playing out, the sun and the moon are opposite when you have a full moon. That means that we're seeing the two sides of the polarity. We're seeing the externalization of what is really happening on an internal level. So exoteric is external, esoteric is the hidden side, the occulted side. So the occulted side here is the sun in Scorpio with Apollon, which Apollo, right? That's the king, the ruler, Rhadamanthus, the judge, and Narcissus. So this is bringing up a lot to do with whatever we need to see in regard to narcissistic personalities. I mean, we can always see narcissism played out in the media, in celebrity, whether it's politicians or just public figures. Like, we get to observe that stuff. It's there for a reason, for us to see and understand. So, um, I mean, it could play out in many, many different ways. Um, but I mean, specifically the narcissism of a judge or judging, seeing narcissism and being able to judge it, discern it, judge it in terms of um, having the karma play out, if that makes sense. It's pretty complicated, and I'm thinking of an example, but I don't want to get into it because it's complicated and it's political, so I don't really want to whatever. But so I think that we probably will be seeing something judicial, whether it's public and very obvious or not. So something having to do with judges. Um, I guess their narcissism. Not all judges are fair and impartial. Some of them are highly biased and partisan. So I think that that will be coming up. Also because Mercury and Mars, and that is very aggressive speech, attacking, going after, exposing, because we're in Scorpio and probably talking about maybe things that people would rather somebody not talk about. But and attacks on judges, but this at this point it's verbal, but I don't know. I think that that might progress. This is a theme, obviously. It's not just happening on the eclipse itself. This is what I think is going to be playing out within the 2 weeks of the eclipse. But I'm saying judges because Mercury and Mars are opposed to Jupiter, and Jupiter is ruler of Sagittarius, and that has to do with judges and legal issues. So, Libra is one of the signs that has to do with lawyers, legal issues, um, legal, opponents in legal cases. Scorpio is about the investigation and the presenting of evidence. And with Jupiter in Taurus, it's physical evidence, it's smoking gun type stuff. And it may have to do with judges in some regard. Um, it can also have to do with passing away of people in the legal profession and judges being targeted. Could be. Um, so Mercury and Mars opposing Jupiter right after the eclipse, the moon hits Jupiter. So the sun is going to move into opposition with Jupiter. So this energy is going to increase. This is what is building. So let's get into the week. And let me just stop to check the chat. I'm at an hour. I'm not going to go more than 2, I promise. Meh. Dave Cruz in the chat. Hi, Dave. Hi, Lynn. And what's going on? Dave says he's feeling it for sure. And Lynn says that it's cold and she's a little grumpy. I feel you, Lynn. I've been grumpy for the past 2 weeks. I would say it's hormonal, but I've been taking my herbs, my supplements, my menopausal stuff. So I'm okay. Uh, whatever. It was a crank fest for the last couple of weeks. You know, I had a little bit of a revelation. And I know sometimes I talk about the serpent energy in astrology. And people hear like snakes and serpents and they think bad. But I will say this whole past year, I've seen more snakes on social media, pictures and, posts and even, people in the woo j- arena that I follow talking about, I thought it was just me. I thought it was just my feed, but other people are noticing it too. Like people's pet snakes getting out and in the in the wild, and they're being caught, and these things are huge. They could swallow a small child. It's crazy. But I have a deep love um and just awe of serpent energy in general. Um because I understand it as being the energy within the body in terms of kundalini, but it's also the what do you call it? Like the ley lines, that's like the meridians and the ley line grids of the planet. and the Kundalini energy of the planet. It's the life force. And serpents represent that, and they have a strong affinity to that. Um, and so, what I was thinking about recently as I was observing my my snakes, I have two of them, and um, so when snakes are getting ready to shed, they can become very irritable, and they just a lot of times they won't eat. You don't see them. They don't really come out during the day anyway, but they have their habit patterns. But when they go into blue, that's what we call it when they're getting ready to shed. Um, uh, the eyes kind of cloud over. They can't see right. It's like it's kind of like snake PMS. um, they're a little feisty. They can be, not mine, but mine, I just don't see them and I don't bother them. And I kind of know, I know their habits and their their patterns and uh, their eating patterns get kind of off, and you know they're not as active. But snakes are known for like not being not to being very sensitive during the time when they're about to shed because their whole energy is caught up into being able to peel that skin off. And you have to have the right conditions of humidity and temperature. And, they have to regulate themselves between hot and cold. And I mean, for mine, the temperature and the humidity is very important for this particular type of snake. And if they don't have enough humidity during the time when they're getting ready to shed, then things will get stuck. And, overall, like you gotta have some pity for these guys because they're going through a lot. And I realized that humans have this process too, because I was identifying it in myself in my own sort of shedding process, or it's like that sort of phoenix, destruction and resurrection, or um the snake and what it goes through when it's shedding. um During my shedding process, I can get kind of cranky. And I'm realizing that for what it is because I am purging and getting rid of a lot of things, which means I'm feeling it and it's not necessarily pleasant. And so I'm kind of a hermit and I'll go off on my own and work it out in silence or try to. But I can get a little feisty during that time. If I feel that my boundaries have been crossed, or if the thing that I'm working on maybe gets triggered, so that I'm just looking at my patterns and understanding that I that's why I know why I get triggered. I know what triggers me, what gets me upset, and during times when I am doing my shedding process and needing my boundaries, keeping my boundaries up, it's for everyone's protection. Because I don't need to be cutting a bitch, right? You just don't get in the way. Um, But it's, it doesn't have to do really with the other person. The other person is just whatever it is, playing a role or helping me to externalize myself. And it's more of, the process. But I'm sure that a lot of you can relate to this, um, because the empathic nature is such that over a lifetime, you learn that you open up and you allow yourself to be close to people or in situations, um, and a lot of times we get hurt, we have difficulties, and then that gets stuck, right? And so there's a healing process that has to go. We have to go through it, and when we realize that um, it's our process, no one else can do it for us, and if we are too raw, sometimes it's better not to be around other people, right? Um, I mean, let's say somebody who's been through a lot of trauma and they're trying to heal from that. It's better not to be in like a close, committed relationship because we really need to look at ourselves, look at where we have been wounded, where we need to heal. And we're still very sensitive and tender and could get triggered or even pulled back into the old pattern. You can't see the pattern until you're out of it. That's why it's really not good to go from like one committed relationship to the next. That's why they call things rebounds, and it just doesn't usually work. Um, but then also, we have to deal with our relationship patterns and addictions in terms of codependency, where that person becomes our security blanket, and we don't learn to self-soothe. It's just another pacifier. So, you know, being out of a relationship for a long time and being able to heal, then when you do think about having another relationship, and I'm talking about committed partnerships, um, intimacy, right? Where you really let somebody into your sphere and risk, obviously, being hurt, but and being able to learn how to build trust and whatnot. And then seeing to what degree we are healed. I feel like a lot of that is coming up with this eclipse because it does have to do with attachment. And Taurus is a sign that I would associate with physical attachment and the self soothing process. And then the Scorpio part of it is the whole psychological component too. So let's see. Dave asks, does this usually happen after an eclipse? You know, um the symbol of the Ouroboros, where the snake is eating its tail, that is representative of the eclipse cycle. And the north and the south node of the moon are the head and the tail of the dragon or the snake. So the lunar cycle is this constant, um, like death and rebirth. The new moon is the new cycle, and the full moon is the ending, the death, and then, you know, It dissipates, wanes, dies down. The energy does. So with eclipses, the lunar and solar eclipses, these are the births and the deaths. This is the beginning and endings. Simultaneously, because this is happening all the time. Oh, Dave, all the feels and shit. It really depends. It depends. Some people are not affected that deeply by this eclipse because they don't have aspects happening in their chart. It depends on whether or not you're, you know, having the degree of the eclipse is affecting planets for you, where it's happening, what house it's happening in, what was going on, what have you been dealing with for the past year and a half while the nodes were transiting through Taurus and Scorpio. Um, Everyone individually has their own stuff, and so some people had more stuff to deal with and than others. So those people would be feeling it. But then again, it also depends on how conscious you are of what it was that you were working through and needing to transform and release, um, and how much of that is conscious, because um, it's been my experience when I feel something very intensely, the intense feelings come first, and uh then the mental part gets to sort it out. So we get to make sense of it. That's the mental and emotional component. Dave says he's asking because he's a fixed sign and he didn't know much about this last year and really went through it. Well, it could be that you were going through it, but you didn't identify that that's what it was. And now the culmination with the lunar eclipse could have been like, oh, looking back on the past, because the moon has to do with the past and the emotions. Um, right? So it is understanding things through our emotions and emotional intelligence, let's say. Um, okay, so Dave says, now with a bit more knowledge, thanks to you, I feel like I have a better understanding now. Okay. So are you saying that you didn't know much? Wait, you didn't know much about this last year? Well, the whole thing is, like, that's the thing about humans. We want certainty. We want to know for sure. But the thing is, and we want to know in advance before it happens, right? But most of the time, we're just learning on the job. Like, we have to take the curveball as it comes. Oh, about the eclipses. Um, yeah, I mean, you have to think about astrology in terms of cycles. Astrology is a clock. A clock has two hands and the minute hand, but the astrological clock has all the planets, right? And then the asteroids, but it's about cycles within cycles. But the major cycles are the lunar cycles, the new moon and the full moon, and then the eclipses. So macro cycles being the eclipses, and the macro and mini mini cycles. Macro, what's the opposite of macro? Anyway, so I know it's confusing. It can be confusing, but that's why it helps to sort of check in at the new moon and the full moon to say, like in the new moon, what is it that you're beginning? At the eclipses, what is it that we're beginning? What is it that we're ending? Right? So, beginnings and endings. What are the cycles within the cycles? What the larger cycle is the eclipse cycle. And then it's broken up into the 6-month lunar cycles. So, to really work with it, we have to really work on ourselves to be aware of where we're at, um, where, what's already transpired, what cycles are we in, and in regard to, whatever the areas of concern of life, whatever we're building, whatever we're working on, whatever we're focusing on, um, where we've been and where we're going. So I guess I take it for granted because I'm always looking at it every day. And um, I keep a journal. So diurnal astrology is daily. Diurnal means daily. And drawing up a chart for your sign, I'm sorry, your birth time every day. And it has to do with the angle of the sun, where it was when you were born, but the degrees won't be the same. The sign won't be the same, but it's where the chart is every day at the time that you were born. Okay, Lynn has to go. Bye, Lynn. You're welcome. We'll see you when we see you. Have a great day. Thanks for stopping by. Um, yeah, so this is my study. This is my daily devotional, the diurnal journal that I keep. So I'm looking at the smaller cycles within the larger cycles, and I do a lot of navel gazing, so I know exactly where I'm at and what I'm dealing with, what I'm working on, and it's just what I've done for so long. Um, so I get it though, like, uh, so I've read for Dave before many times, and so I don't know, Dave, if you're not really clear exactly, or you want me to like really kind of break it down for you, like what the cycle is that's wrapping up for you and um where that's been playing out, we can talk about that. Let me know. Um so just think about what you've been doing for the past 6 months. Think about where you were a year ago. That whole cycle is ending. I know what happened. You know what happened. So it's really about what have you learned? What have you been able to work through within that period of time? And where do you find yourself now? And the next phase of it is based on what you've learned, your understanding of yourself, your needs, your goals, your resources of what you're looking at, and your understanding of the past, really, what it meant for you, what you were supposed to see, and then you make a choice moving forward with all that information and work with the resources at hand, the opportunities at hand, and where you feel you need to go um, intuitively. I mean, this is for everybody, not just for Dave. And where you might need a little, where you can do it on your own and where you might need a little bit of assistance. Do you need more information? Do we need to further our education? Do we need to have a little bit of counseling? Do we need to get a reading? Do we need to work a little bit harder, put more emphasis in one area and less in another? Do we need to move on from a relationship? Do we need to come back together and give it another shot? It's wherever you are right now. So, self-awareness and understanding of your astrology and your cycles are very, very key. And working with that energy, you know, I get kind of frustrated when I see or hear people talking about like just manifestation from a perspective of like, if I want it and I mantra it, I can have it. Um, it isn't like that. And if you look at the astrology, sometimes we're going to be going through the shitter. So that's going to bust up somebody's belief system big time if they think that if all they, all they need to do is just focus on what they want and whatever, pour their energy into manifesting that, then it should just happen. Um, you know, and then they get frustrated because it's not happening and they start probably blaming other people. Well, it's the job, it's the boss, or it's the girlfriend, it's the boyfriend. Not in the right, if I was just in the right situation. No. That's narcissistic. And I don't know. I'm thinking back on a comment that somebody made one time where a friend of theirs was going through the shitter and he made a comment like, I wonder why he's manifesting that. And I thought, that's that same judgment that I saw, growing up in church. Like, well, if if you're doing the right things, then God will bless you. If you're struggling financially, just, in relationships, going through a tough time, then that's God's judgment on you. So, this is why I can tell you the new age law of attraction, manifestation, bullshit. Not to say that there isn't a law of attraction and that manifestation is not a spiritual principle. It is. However, it has become this sort of like ideology where it allows certain people to think that they're better than other people because they happen to be, you know, having good times, experiencing some abundance, right? But to look at someone else and say, wow, I wonder why, they're probably doing something wrong, or this is karma and they're being punished, but karma isn't punishment, right? And God doesn't judge like that. We all go through the ups and the downs. And I'm pretty sure that the person that made that comment went through some struggles subsequent um, after making that comment. And then probably had to do some soul searching. Why am I manifesting this? And maybe they have an better understanding now of how that works. I don't know. But um, judge not, lest ye be judged. And to look at another person and think that you know their situation or, cast someone aside because they're struggling, so they must be a quote, low vibrational person. You got a lot to learn. You're externalizing what you should be internalizing, and look at your own self, tend your own garden, stop judging other people. So let me get back to, I've talked enough about the eclipse. The moon, let's see. So the moon today will be conjuncting Uranus, and that will also trigger the solar eclipse because Uranus is at 21 degrees of Taurus, and the solar eclipse was 21 to 22 degrees of Libra, and they made it in conjunct. So there's a flip. There's a unexpected change, flipping of the game board, so to speak, things that you did not expect to happen in certain ways. That could be happening over the next few hours as we go through this day. And it is a one day, so don't make decisions based on what you thought the last 9-day cycle was, or what the last 2 weeks look like, because we're going to have to make some adjustments with that moon Uranus, and it'll have to do with whatever the changes that came with the eclipse, whatever they are for you. Now, the asteroid Pallas Athena is coming to the degree of the solar eclipse. It's at 21 degrees of Libra right now. So tomorrow it'll be at 22 roughly, and that'll be triggering the solar eclipse in Libra. That's the degree. So Pallas Athena has to do with strategy, patterns, and war, of course. So I see this as being a sudden shift in the situation, sudden shift in values, sudden shift in resources, new strategies, new paradigm. Um, so that could be very interesting. And Venus, so now let's look at Monday. This is October 30th. Today's the 1 day, tomorrow is the 2. So 1 is me. I start with 1. So it's a good day to focus on self. And the 2 day, it's more of a dualistic and, dual dynamic. So it's me and the other person. Who else? Someone else comes into the mix. It's the one-on-one type of dealing. And that is tomorrow, the 30th. Now we have Venus making a trine to Uranus. Venus is in Virgo. Uranus is in Taurus. So this is an Earth trine. It's stabilizing things, but it's new, right? New, bringing in new stuff, new relating patterns, new relationships, new people, or new way of relating. Venus also has to do with our, health in Virgo, patterns and systems. That's Virgo in terms of, let's say, procedural things and regulations. So I wonder if we'll see something around that with the Uranus Venus trine. It could also mean some kind of change in the financial system also, now Venus does relate to the common folk, the working class, the average citizen, um, people in the service sector. So that could come into play. The moon will be in Taurus, the tail end of Taurus, making a trine to Pluto the first part of the day. So there is a sense of gaining power, taking the reins, perhaps in terms of government and finances, we could see something here, gaining control over not the financial system, but like getting budget and spending on track. And then the next part of the day, the moon is in Gemini. So in the beginning of Gemini, it's it's making a square to Saturn. So there is some tension here in terms of what we want to communicate and how we're feeling emotionally in regard to restrictions, perhaps, lack and limitation and responsibility. We may be feeling like there's a conversation that we need to have, or um, even drawing a boundary with that. Um, it has something to do with the eclipse, whatever came up during the eclipse, and because Jupiter and Mars and Mercury are opposed, that can be blowing things like way out of proportion emotionally, because also the moon will be going into its out of bound phase, which it does when it goes through Gemini. And while the moon is in Gemini, it starts on Monday and then continues to go out of bounds until it peaks. So it's going to be out of bounds for quite some time. I'm going to say there is a huge, it starts to build up. It peaks with the eclipse and something breaks, and then it gains momentum, and there's a lot of information and communication, and at the same time, it's restriction. So maybe there is something coming in regarding censorship or restriction of what information is allowed to get out, even though it's getting out. It just doesn't seem like they can stop the flow, or we can stop the flow. Something breaks with the eclipse, and then comes the need to talk about it. And with the moon in Gemini on Monday, I feel like we'll want to talk about it. And we really, really do want to form alliances and know that we have people that we can go to when things get a little hairy. People who share our values is very important right now. So the Venus Uranus trine is going to probably, push us more towards people who are in our quote tribe. But it seems that as much as there is information coming out, there's still there is still that throttling with Saturn. And Saturn is slowing to go direct. So we have this huge energy building up, and there's a lot that is being revealed, being uncovered with the Scorpio, Mars, and Mercury. It's really, really digging. And then the sun will come through all week through those degrees that Mars and Mercury have been through. And the gates are just going to open up, and there will be a flood of information and truth and feeling surfacing and being able to put words to and want to and really be karmically obligated. It's part of the karma right now to speak about it. And at the same time, it's going to be, well, we'll see how it plays out. Yeah, there's a lot coming that some people don't want getting out. Anyway, very, very intense energy over this week. So the 30th, the moon starts to go out of bounds and it's in Gemini, and Gemini cannot keep its mouth shut. So the 30th, that's a 2. Definitely the need to communicate and relate on a deeper level and looking for um where is that stable, long-term sort of return on investment with Saturn? So that's the 30th. Um, the sun will be at in the constellation Crux on the star Gay Crux, and so that's the cross right there. So again, we have this idea of sacrifice, hanging on the cross, the hanged man. Think of the hanged man on the card, right, in the tarot, and being in suspense, being suspended, um, being at a crossroads and having to make a sacrifice or a decision. And the moon square to Saturn, it's karmic. The moon is also square to Juno and Lilith. So it's about what we want to purify within our relationships and commit and partner with, which began with Juno and with Lilith entering into Virgo and opposing Saturn. It's like, how do we have more mature relationships, and how do we commit, so to speak? So anyway, it's a crossroads and a decision, and Virgo is wanting to perfect. So therefore it is kind of seeing all the flaws, and it's also dealing with our fears and our shadow at the same time with Lilith, right? So again, judge not lest ye be judged. Dave just sent me a message that my feed is cutting in and out. I don't know what to do about that. I'm not sure, because where did that message go? Because I only have one one person on the stream as far as I know, and only one person in the chat, and that was Dave. So anyway, I'm just going to keep going. You know what? Maybe I'll turn my VPN off. I've been having problems with that. It's really stupid. So this all makes me think of social media and throttling and deplatforming and what's going on out in the world and possibly trying to shut down and control the narrative, maybe shutting down. That would probably be happening over the next 2 weeks, I'm going to guess, because Mercury is going to oppose Uranus. So Uranus's rebellion, it's also technology and social media. Mercury is communications and um Scorpio is about spying and intrigue and drama. So that's pretty much. Oh, the sun, gay crux, the cross, and Cambalia, the alchemist star. Cambalia is in Corona Borealis. And so that is the. Wait, now my browser is refreshing. What the hell? Am I still on? All right, Dave. So it could be your thing. Well, my browser just refreshed, but I also turned my VPN off. I don't know. Who knows? Now I have two viewers, but it's really both of them are Dave. Thank you, Dave. Can you like the show? Like it twice. That's funny. All right. So very interesting Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Uh, uh let's see. Yeah, there's going to be a shit ton. There's just going to be a shit ton of information coming our way because people are exposing things with this. And we do have, um, as I've talked about, the transits through Scorpio are triggering asteroids in Cancer that I've been talking about for a while. Arachne, Asbolus, the seer, Chaos, obvious, and Ascalaphus. Ascalaphus is the snitch and the whistleblower. Then we have Vesta. I guess you could say this is a devotion, a certain fire and passion and devotion to a cause. Then we have Estrella, which is justice. Binor, the strong man. Hades, Kronos, and Photographica. So all of those playing out adds up to people coming forward with the Scorpio transits, with the detective work, the secrets. That's Scorpio. Scorpio has been doing a lot of investigation, and now it's time to bring it out. I see a lot of this stuff on Twitter. I don't know where anybody else gets their news. I mean, I guess, there are certain people who are disseminating in Telegram groups and whatnot, but Twitter is, for me, I like it because I could just put a keyword in and I can look at whatever I need information on, and I'll see regular news. Is it coming up in the regular news? Or is this just something that people are talking about? Word on the street. Plus people's experiences and photographic evidence. So, this is building through the week. So Hades, hell, death. Kronos is Saturn. It's a form of Saturn, just another iteration. But it's also, Kronos specifically is about power, power and influence that is very deeply entrenched, long standing power. Uh, and then Photographica, we're going to see the evidence, the evidence, and it's probably going to be ugly. Or, you know, uh, I mean, I use the political stuff, let's say, as an example, but here's a personal example. And not, this is a hypothetical situation. All right. Let's say you're unaware of a situation or a dynamic, right? And then you happen to be scrolling Facebook or whatever, and you see a picture, and all of a sudden, it's all very clear to you in black and white, in photographic evidence, whether it's just like stuff being exposed that you didn't know on a personal level. Or like, I don't know, this happened to me where I had a falling out with some people, and I had a friend who decided they weren't going to take sides, which made them a frenemy because the friend of my enemy is my frenemy, right? So I'm scrolling, and I happen to see a picture of the enemy, the enemy camp, and this frenemy liked that picture. And that person knew what I went through. They knew what those people did. So it's that kind of a thing where you have to see it. It has to be in your face. Because I always kind of suspected, like I wasn't sure about this person's loyalty, but that was pretty much in my face. And from that moment on, I decided that person was persona non grata, you know, bye, bitch. I just kind of ignored them. From then on, till they finally got the hint. But, I didn't see any need to explain myself. If you don't know, then whatever. The lack of self-awareness sometimes stuns me. So I'm illustrating a point, but as Mars and Mercury move, in further in degrees into Scorpio, they are going to trine these asteroids. So if I don't, I think the United States sun might be around 15 Cancer. I think it's somewhere in the middle of Cancer there. Kronos and Photographica, power, Saturn, karma, family karma, family influence and power, and Photographica. I don't know. What else can that mean other than besides a picture? So, what do we know that's a Scorpio? What do we know that's a Cancer? Anyway, so there will be things coming out, things being dredged up, and they're dark because it's Scorpio. The other thing is, so moving on to the 31st, the 31st is our 3-day. Now remember, whatever ended yesterday between today, tomorrow, Monday, there's the new thing building that will show its head on Tuesday. So with Tuesday, with the 3-day, we will see where things are shaping up. Now, Mercury will be at 15 to 16 degrees of Scorpio, which is on Zuben al-Janubi, which is the south scale. The south scale is the insufficient price. It is the lacking. It is in the weights, in the scales of justice, coming up lacking. Not enough, insufficient, guilty, insufficient evidence, whatever it is. So that's the 3-day, and it's Mercury. So what is the information that we're getting on Tuesday? On Halloween. I would relate the South Scale to be unfair or lacking in terms of legality and fulfillment of the law. So we could be seeing that. And the moon will be in Gemini. It's going to make an inconjunct to Mars and Mercury. So there's some kind of information that comes out that is going to shift the balance of power, shift a legal situation, shift someone's karma because of a greater understanding, more evidence in order to weigh the matter, to bring justice. And Venus is going to be in trine aspect exactly on Tuesday. So there will be something. There will be some big change when it comes to finances, values, and the financial system, perhaps. And the moon will make a square by the end of the day, late Tuesday into Wednesday, make a square between Venus and, wait a second, it'll make a square to Venus, and it will square to Neptune. And Venus is about to oppose Neptune. So there is something coming up here where we could be not clear about relationships, not clear perhaps in regard to our values, but there's something that we need to see also about our finances. And so I think throughout the course of the week, we'll be getting some interesting information when it comes to finances, when it comes to who has been perhaps getting paid off, and where there is deception, there will be some level of exposure, but also there could be a pulling of the wool over people's eyes when it comes to anything to do with money and diplomatic relations, I would say also, and playing on people's heartstrings and their values to deceive them into supporting certain things. So the split continues to get splittier, but really watch on that day. Watch your money. I feel this just feels kind of scammy to me, like hacker scammy energy, where I don't know, catfishing and getting sucked into schemes, getting ripped off. Just be really careful when it comes to just something seems too good to be true. It is. That is Tuesday. Remember, it's Mercury. The communication, the information is on the south scale. it's not good. It's not bringing justice. It's not bringing all the information. You're not getting all of the information. And just allow things to play out over these days when the moon is in Gemini and it's out of bounds. It is going to be really crazy. So a lot of what you're hearing may not be true. There may be a lot of panic going on. This is probably when things kind of dump financially. There's a dip, dump, whatever. It's coming out of fear. And based on news and information that may not be accurate. So it is not really the time to make a bail, like bail on something, or get into something, make big decisions if it comes to relationships also, um, or finances all week. This is all week because I expect some kind of financial chaos this week. Also, there is probably some health stuff in the mix with Venus and Virgo. A lot more information coming out in the sector of health. I'll let you fill in the blank. And exposure where there has been deception. And that will be the Venus moving into opposition with Neptune. So on November 1st is a 1 day. So what I want you to notice is we have Monday, that's the 2. Tuesday, the 31st, is a 3. Then we jump into November, that's 11/1 plus 7 is a 1. So we go from a 3 to a 1 to a 3. 3, 1, 3. And now we are going to see that November is a very important month numerologically, because the year adds up to 7 and the month is 2, and that is a 9. So 9s are very important. There's an ending here. It'll be very intense. So we start the month off on the 1st with a 1. We go from a 3 back to a 1 and then start over again. 1, 2, 3. Well, sorry, I said 1, 3, 1, 3. I'm looking at November 1st, and then November 3rd is a 3. November 6th is a 6. November 9th is a 9. So the date, the day is always going to be the full date reduction. Does that make sense? Month plus day plus year. Because we have a month that's a 2, a year that's a 7, that makes it a 9 in the cycle with November, and that means that the day number is always going to be what the full date reduces to. So November 1st is a 1. November 3rd is the 3. November 6th is the 6th. November 9th is the 9. So things are going to be weird. Things are going to, I mean, they've been weird. They're going to get weirder. They're going to get weirder and more intense. And you have to keep your footing. Know that things are changing for the better, but you have to participate in it and don't get stuck in what's ending and don't get sucked into the fear porn. Be very aware that there will be some sort of bullshittery that's going to be coming our way. So November 1st, we have the moon early in the day square to Neptune. So we're going to be seeing that deception. We're going to see the amping up of the sort of religious extremism and fervor, the cult activity, exposing, opening Pandora's box because we have Pandora there. Things are going to be very faded because we have Clotho. Now, the 30th and 31st, Venus will oppose Clotho. Clotho is one of the three fates, but Clotho is also an enzyme or a protein related to genetics. I don't know exactly how it fits in, but it's a factor. And Venus will be opposing it. So you have all of those things going on. Factor in the deception and factor in the health. You know where I'm going with that. So on the 31st, she's opposing Clotho, and then she will oppose. She makes a trine to Uranus. That's a big leap forward in our consciousness and evolution, big rebellions. And the moon is going to in conjunct to Pluto. So there will be some sort of obsessiveness, control, uh, probably the crumbling of, uh, we'll get to see the crumbling in real time of our governmental system as things are playing out and people are getting exposed for their financial dealings too, I would say. And so people's control issues will be being triggered, and we have to see beyond the veil with Neptune. What else? Oh, but well, Boracisi. So I've been talking about religion with that, and the Speaker of the House seems to be um extremely on the conservative Christian side. I mean, not just Republican conservative, aligned with Trump, but like really conservative Christian. I expect that will be coming into the polarization here. Definitely. Um, because there's a lot of this sort of end time scenario going on with Pluto at the end of Capricorn and Neptune at the end um of Pisces. So it is this sort of melding together of the the value systems politically and religious, because this is end time programming being triggered. This is the apocalypse. This is um that's why I posted on Twitter uh the cult stuff is coming up, being like on the rise, because a lot of religious groups are looking at this as their quote end times. And with the end times comes a savior, but not before, I don't think, eschatologically, I'm not sure. Some people are pre-trib and then there's post-trib, and this is the tribulation, right? So, the battle. So the battle is upon us. So people's end time scenarios are playing out. And so we're going to see this sort of religious programming come up. Um, and as one group rises in power, it's going to trigger another group. Everyone has their savior, and everyone each has their Satan, which is usually the other guy, you know? Oh my God, this is definitely playing out all week long. So, on the second, on the first, we're still in Gemini. And remember, the moon is out of bounds. This is like above and beyond. The emotional factor is unrestrained. Um, and people are very much prone to making emotional decisions at this time, which is why I said be careful this week because on the first, with the moon is square, it squares Venus and it squares Neptune. Be careful what you do with your money. Don't get suckered in. Don't make impulse decisions in regard to your relationships or your finances because everything feels like it's falling apart. You know what I mean? Like, people tend to cling to what's familiar, even if it's not perfect. And I know that there are a lot of people who feel like they have a sense of the days, the end days, the apocalyptic times, regardless of religion. It's not really a religion thing. But there is a sense of wanting to cling to other people and, you know, gather together. And we're going to see more of these sort of apocalyptic cults, whether it's religious or it's just, the truthers or the Trumpers, or whatever it is, survivalists, the off the gridders, it's all amping up this week. People are going to be triggered. I know those like survivalist stores online, like food prep, that kind of stuff. Um, I bet you they're gonna be running out of shit and saying, "Oh, we can't supply everybody. It's on back order. Get it now." Either it's all hyped up or they literally are running out of shit. That's also Venus in Virgo. That's food prepping. Anyway, I mean, you could be preparing. It's good to prepare, but you could be preparing for something that you don't, need. Um, That's why you have to understand the difference between your fear and your intuition. What does your intuition say? Anyway, playing out all week. The fear really amps up on the first. Then going into the second, the moon is in Cancer. It will make a trine to the Scorpio planets. Maybe feeling a little bit more harmonized with the sun and the moon in a trine and making a sextile to Jupiter. So that does seem like it's a little bit more stabilizing, but we'll definitely be wanting more security, physical and emotional security. Um, And building trust is very important with the sun in Scorpio and opposing Jupiter. Um, so now the sun is coming into position where Mars and Mercury were at with the eclipse. So things are shaping up. You'll see where things are at by then. It feels like a changing of direction, maybe even a change of leadership and um, uncertainty. It's because of uncertainty in relationships and finance. But wait till that Neptune opposition to a Venus opposition to Neptune. Wait until that's over to really make any decisions. Like, let that intuition guide you. Like, is what you're feeling and sensing showing up literally in your physical environment? And is it practical? Does it make sense? Or is it fantasy or fear? All right, that's what we need to deal with Venus and Virgo opposing Neptune in Pisces. All right. So that is Wednesday. That's Thursday. Um, and the moon will be going through Cancer, so we obviously have to look at again what I was talking about with Estrella, Justice, Ascalaphus. People are coming forward with information. We're going to hear about it. Justice, the Binor is the strong man. So who is safeguarding or gatekeeping? That could come up. And Hades, obviously the underworld and hell and hidden things and torment, Chronos, power, and Photographica. These things are going to be triggered through the weekend. Thursday is the second. Yeah. All right. So going into Friday, Friday's the third, and that's the 3-day. Excuse me. So something between the 31st on Tuesday will relate to um, the 3rd of November because they're both 3 days. But remember, in between, we went back to a 1 when we moved into November. So there's a building, a beginning, but then there's a reset, a beginning again, and then the second, and then the third. Um, and then the energy starts to build again, right? So this is for Thursday. Hold on. It's not. It's Friday. The 3rd is Friday, and the moon is in Cancer. It is squaring the nodes. So Aries and Libra, war or diplomacy, right? And the me versus the we. And we've got now Venus coming into its direct opposition with Neptune. Venus and Neptune, they kind of work well together, but it's sort of a rose-colored glasses, sort of delusional denial when it comes to Venus things like money, love, that kind of thing. And maybe idolization, perhaps, but it's the opposition is the polarity. You have to look at what is the fantasy and what is real. And you've got a lot of water to work with here with the moon in Cancer, really seeking security. Um, that's Cancer, you know? But anyway, so a lot of sensitivity, maybe some storms too. The weather could be getting a little crazy this week. I know it's the temperature's going down here. But anyway, so it's just building all week and it's pretty sensitive and nostalgic, and then it goes into a bit of fear later on Thursday on the 3rd with the moon opposing Pluto. So dealing with our inner emotions as to what is the destruction and death that's happening around us, the system crumbling, government stuff, and power games, and the need for security. So the 4th, that's Friday. This is when Venus is hitting her peak. She's building up to that opposition all week, but by Friday, the 4th, um, and that's the 4 day, Venus is exactly opposed to Neptune. So I expect there should be coming out something in the realm of finance and deceit and lying, all of those things that I mentioned, all of the sort of illusory stuff, and what is practical, and issues around resources, dealing with fear, and whatever's going on in our relationships and health. I expect there's going to be a lot coming out in the realm of news regarding health this week, too. So, health and the industries that make a lot of money off of it. All right, so on the 4th, also, we have Mercury opposing to Uranus. So there is some information, some totally mind-blowing, crazy stuff coming out because that Uranus energy is really, really wild. Really wild. So there's a mental breakdown or a breakthrough. I see that with the Mercury and Uranus. Uranus is trying to break us out of where we're stuck, what we're still attached to, and Mercury is really going to do a number on the mind if we are experiencing any cognitive dissonance. And Mercury, just in general, in Scorpio, is very deep and probing, and it's wanting to discuss taboo subjects. So, uh, you know, is this Dia de los Muertos? I'm not sure exactly the day, but we are talking about Halloween season and Day of the Dead. It's the time when we really look very deeply into the cycle of life and face our own shadow um and our own mortality. So there could be some shocking and unexpected news of people passing. I think that Matthew Perry was just the first. Uh, I'm trying to think. I was looking at somebody's chart yesterday. I won't go into it because I don't have time. But somebody that seems to be having trouble, and I'll hold on to that unless something actually happens to the person because I would not want to like predict that. But I would say that the person's probably going through a rough time. Anyway, Scorpio, it's intense. And I think okay, so we're at the 4th. The moon is in Leo. There's gonna be a lot probably in regard to celebrities and public figures, um, possibly children, because that's Leo. Performers, actors, people in the public eye, and Leo having to do with children. Okay. So that's the 4th. What else is going on? All right, the 5th, then we have the moon is square to all the Scorpio planets and the Taurus planets. It's going to square Jupiter. It's going to square the sun. This is the last quarter square. Things always come up at the last quarter square. So, bringing it to our awareness, what is being released, what is dying away. And the moon is square to Mars, so there will be perhaps some aggressiveness or anger to be dealt with, and um, maybe some subversive type activities going on because the moon will square Uranus, so there's stuff coming up and then there's a reaction to it. There's a back and forth here going on where the deeper it goes, the more we get the reaction and things are coming up for us to understand. Um, Also in Virgo with Venus there making a trine to Pluto, we're going to see some of the financial manipulations and issues going on. Um, the other thing that I noticed that came up across my desk, and this has to do with Scorpio, is taxes and new tax laws they want to implement in regard to crypto. Crypto is Uranus in Taurus, and um, Mercury and Mars and the Sun being in a sign of Scorpio. We're talking about taxes, right? Okay, so I expect more talk about that and banking, perhaps. This all ties in together, whether it has to do with your own personal finances and relationship, but there is something happening here with money, the money supply, what's going on globally with like BRICS and digital currencies of all kinds. I think there's something happening here. November 4th into the 5th. Uh, and trying to maintain control as always. So we've got the rebellion on one side and the new innovation and technology with Uranus and Taurus, and then on the other side it's Scorpio wanting to control it, wanting to tax it, wanting to track it. And Venus making that trine to Pluto is the old system crumbling, but the old players trying to maintain control of the financial situation as we go into the new system. Let's see what comes up this week in that regard. Uh, um, I'm just looking at because the moon is in Leo. Leo is ruled by the sun. The sun is in Mercury. We need to look at probably um, the financial dealings of leaders. I know we're looking at that. I mean, that's happening where we have stuff going on, like with the what is it, the oversight committee, right? Congressional hearings, stuff like that. There will be something that comes out, probably more. Like it's already come out about bribes and um, deals that and ways that people in power have benefited financially from their position, and rather than serving the public, they've been lining their pockets. So there's going to be more coming out in terms of in terms of that. There's going to be more investigation in terms of people's finances when it comes to people like in the public eye, in whether it's investments or um, bribes, that kind of thing. That's what I think we'll be seeing. So that's the 5th, that's Saturday, and then we have Sunday, November 6th, and that's the 6th day. So what happens um on the 31st, the 3-day, Mercury is at the south scale. On Thursday, the 3rd, Mars will be on the south scale. So it's the information, the understanding, the news, and then it's Mars, the action, the aggression, the assertion of power. Um, it can also have to do with law enforcement and military because it is Mars. But we're talking about the south scale. So it's something that is, we would say, judged to be not in line legally, falling short of fulfillment of the law. So whatever actions are being taken, let's watch it on Thursday. And then the next step would be the 6th day, and that's Sunday. And that will be the moon at the end of Leo. The moon is going to square Mercury. So there is some kind of information that's developing, some kind of case that's being built. And Pluto is, the moon's making an inconjunct to Pluto. That's a passing influence, it only lasts a few hours, but the moon is going to be at the degree of the Venus retrograde point. So that is significant. I think we need to look in 3-month sort of increments and look back at what was going on 3 months ago. What were we dealing with in August? What did we hear about in August? And it was all about the financial system and where things are going and asset-backed currencies. We're going to see something with this, with the Mercury at 25 Scorpio. The moon will trigger it. It will also trigger Pluto. So there is something to do with power and government, and we can't deny the criminal element when it comes to Scorpio. Believe that Mercury will start to conjunct Joe Biden's sun, SUN, not his SON. I'm gonna say that I think he was called to testify, though we didn't get the transcript of that testimony. Maybe that will come out this week, but there'll be more having to do with his financial stuff and the laptop from hell. Uh, there's so much more on that laptop besides, the influence peddling and the payments that he wants to say are not bribes. But he sold us out. And the evidence is there. We've known it for years, but the evidence. So some big stuff I think will be coming out in regard to those because those are legal judicial matters. These are lawsuits. They're not lawsuits literally, but they're the legal process in our government. But there will also be things coming out in other lawsuits because we have Jupiter being triggered, but it will be financial, diving into financial records, that kind of thing. Um, I expect it to get very interesting. I don't know. I don't know. I just keep looking at like more exits of prominent figures and the official narrative of why they're no longer with us is not the real story. And for that, we'd have to really do a deep dive, astrologically speaking. And that kind of wraps up the week. It's going to be interesting. Dave says Dia de los Muertos is November 1st to the 2nd. Cool. You know what I really miss about LA is during the festival of Dia de los Muertos. Just so cool. And I don't know, I love those. I love the motif. I just love the vibe of it and the Mexican folk art and um those huge carnations. Those things I bought like a bunch of them at Trader Joe's when I was there, and they're so beautiful. They lasted forever. Anyway, that kind of I miss that kind of stuff, but I don't miss a lot of I don't miss a lot of things about California. But anyway, so death and destruction, literal and figurative, that's all I can say. And the balancing of the scales because as I've mentioned before, the actual constellation of Libra, the scales of Libra, the stars are located now in Scorpio. And actually, in ancient times, the scales were actually the claws of the scorpion. So the true balancing of karma happens in Scorpio season. So that's our death and rebirth process. And sometimes we come up short. Sometimes the first try is, you know, we throw it to the wall and it doesn't stick. It's not enough. And so we are judged and deemed lacking um, on a metaphorical level, of course, but sometimes literally. We'll see what happens this year, this week. We'll see what happens with it all. Oh my God, did I really go almost 3 hours? I can't stand it. I say this every time. I need to streamline. But I'll be back during the week to talk it out. Probably, I don't know, Tuesdays seem to be a good day for me to kind of check in, take the temperature. But we are hitting some sort of a tipping point around midweek, Thursday into Friday, with the moon squaring the nodes of Fate and Pluto, also loosely squaring the nodes. So the transformational process, we're in it. You know, the system is crumbling, the old way of life is dying, and there are factions vying for power. The only thing we can do is watch and don't get attached to either side. you know, it's a game of polarity. And so it becomes a challenge to try to surf that and not get emotionally tied up in the fear or the attachment of one side or one set of values versus another. It's not either or, it's either and. It's this and that. And we need to be able to synthesize those things in order to live in harmony. We have to be able to look at our own power struggles, our own need to control things, our own obsessions, addictions, our fears, um, our attachment to the old world, the old ways, and just kind of, sail on, let it be. But it will get intense and it will hit a tipping point. We're also looking at, the evolution of consciousness and the awakening of people to what is really going on in the world and seeing it for what it is, and hopefully becoming more involved in the process, because that's part of maturity. You know, we kind of have a world right now, until recently, let's say, until the last 3 to 5 years, where people just trusted the government, trusted people in power to govern and make decisions on our behalf in our best interest, and assuming that they're doing so. But the huge awakening is, surprise, they're not. They're not there for us. They're there for them and their own gain and their own need for power and money and their own agendas and they're not representing. So the awakening is the realization of that fact, coming to terms with it and demanding that we get our money's worth, because it's supposed to be by the people, for the people, by the people, right? Uh, we lost that. We lost control of that. We've been asleep. It's time to wake up. And it's happening. It's happening. We don't really trust the government anymore. We don't really trust the media. And so we've been getting our own opinion and getting up to speed as to what has been happening so that we can know what to do about it. That's where we're at. I think people are getting more involved in the process, and you could see that by people going out and gathering in huge groups and protesting, right? Um, and this not a bad thing. But there's an understanding now that it's not us against us. It's like them against all of us, right? We are all the oppressed, and we have the power and safety in numbers. So, um, so the pushback is coming. It's coming, but we have to see the big lie, the big deception. That's going to be coming up this week, as if it wasn't juicy enough already. I don't know how many people actually keep up with what's going on in Congress, in our government, and with certain lawsuits that are really important and haven't even really begun to be tried yet. And there will be cameras in the courtroom, I hear. So, I keep up with these things. I think it's really fascinating, and I've learned a lot. But then again, I was the fucking nerd in my 20s that when C-SPAN came on TV and all of our congressional and like Senate and government shit was on TV, and I was like, whoa, so that's what they're doing. I thought it was fucking awesome. Where's C-SPAN now? Right? Our media is supposed to be covering these things, but they're not. We all know it's bullshit. But we have alternatives to that, and there are some people that are really breaking it down from a legal standpoint. Robert Gouveia is one. Gouveia, Gouvia, I think. Um, Watching the Watchers. And he's a lawyer and he is super fucking sharp. I love the way he presents his material. He has like a map and he goes through the day's events and keeps up with certain cases. And um, I learned a lot. It was very informative, and he really breaks it down from a legal perspective, the analysis. There's other people that are analyzing things that are transpiring in our government, hearings and other lawsuits. I keep up with LawTube, the LawTubers, so I like that. And so you don't have to sit there and listen to all this stuff. You don't have to like read the judicial briefs and motions, and they explain it all to you. It's fucking fantastic. So uh there's a lot going on. But unless you keep up with that, you wouldn't necessarily know that people are testifying and lying on the stand and being called out and you know um being exposed and shown for who they are without the media spin on it. We're talking about a courtroom, right? Very, very different than what you're going to see on news media. Anyway, so that wraps it up. It should be pretty interesting to say the least. And I'll pop in during the week to check in, see where we're at, and report as I see fit or as I am able. But thank you for joining me. And um, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. Find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Go to the link in the description if you want to join the Gilded Chat discussion. Or also, you can subscribe to the newsletter so that if I need to update things about where I'm going to be and when I get that going back up and running on Substack, look for me, Astro Lunatic, and subscribe to that too. And also, as always, if you would like a personal reading or an astrology coaching session, you can contact me at astrolunatic@gmail.com or on the Astro Lunatic hotline, 914-222-1231. You can call, leave a message, or you can text, and I will get back to you at my earliest convenience. All right, you guys, it's really scary that this went 3 hours, but if you've hung out to the very end, you win a prize. I don't know what it is yet, but I don't know. There's no one in the chat but Dave, so Dave wins a prize. I see 2 viewers, but I don't know who the other one is. All right, you guys, have a great week, and I'll see you in the ethers. Ciao for now.